So good afternoon once again. I welcome you all to DOI3 session number 3 for this Atal FGP. So the next speaker is Dr. Surjit Devnath. Dr. Devnath is currently working as Head Department of Medical Laboratory Technology, Women's Polytechnic in Tripura. He has more than 13 years of experience in biomedical research, and he had participated in various academic work in institutions of Germany, Denmark, Hong Kong, besides in premier Indian labs such as AIIMS in the field of cytogenetics, IIT Kharagpur in the field of biotechnology, in IIT Guwahati in the field of biomedical engineering, and at NDEGR in the field of plant genomics. Dr. Devnath is recipient of Young Scientist Award from different agencies like DBT, DST, and CSIR. He is recipient of Tata Trust grant for CMA course in Royal College of Pathologists, London. He is reviewer of several Scopus and SCI index journals published by Elsevier, Springer, Biomed Central. So along with regular academic activities, he's also engaged with several biotechnology companies in Northern and Western India as a consultant. He had conducted various workshops and talks, acted as session chair in an international conference sponsored by national and international academic agencies. He delivered numerous invited talks in national and international academic gatherings, and currently he is guiding a group of international students for the internship from Russia, Turkey, and West African countries. So I welcome you, Dr. Devnath, and I'm really thankful to you for accepting my invitation to deliver this talk at this FTP. I would like to invite you once again to please start your session. Please.
Okay, thank you, madam. So I'll this thing today is 6th. Okay, so we'll be having it. So is am I audible and the screen is visible?
Yes,
now?
sir. Screen is visible. And
absolutely fine.
Well,
okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, great. So what happens is, as the theme of this things, the whole FDP is on drug design, but we are in my session we'll be about drugs, but not exactly the small molecules. I'll be talking about the interest that we have in our lab near peptides. So what has happened is, all know that these days it is really challenging to bring about a significant contribution with limited funding that is available right now, and institutions and lab like mine, which is quite small and struggles a lot to arrange fundings for various kind of studies that we anticipate. So we now depend a lot on artificial intelligence and machine learning, mainly in order to reduce the numbers of false positives as well as false negatives, so that we can maximize our resource, optimize more or less to be about exact wet lab experiments that we anticipate that it will result into something good. Otherwise, usually if we end up our resources using costly reagents and skill for doing the experiments, like which will ultimately end up with not very good results. So it will be difficult for us to sustain. In order to reduce these chances, we are significantly using machine learning techniques, mainly in order to reduce the numbers of false positives as well as false negatives on the basis of the experiment that we are doing. So I would like to give a little discussion on what exactly we can do, and more or the other objective of this session is to do a little networking if possible to similar kinds of labs where it is going on this kind of work. So what is it is, when we talk about peptide based therapeutics, we are essentially talking about three things. These are either for diagnostics or therapeutics or drug delivery. So peptide-based things can either be used in these three broad aspect. Today, one more aspect is also developing, that is diagnostics, where diagnostics and therapeutics will be taken care by a single molecule, which is essentially a peptide, and therefore it will be better patient compliance, as well as the cost will also get reduced. So a couple of these things has been already been tried in different areas and different labs. If we talk about only diagnostics, peptide-based tools are helpful in bioimaging. Then in biosensors, imaging we are talking, we are mostly many a times we are talking about antibodies and some proteins with some fluorescent activity, which are useful for various couple of diagnostic tools and techniques. Then when we are talking about biosensors, we are many a times we are talking about RES-based enzymes, which are useful in electrodes. For example, your glucose estimation kit that you use in your house, which comprises of a particular kind of enzyme, which is their electrode, which can sense a particular kind of redox reaction, and essentially it can be calibrated to find what exactly is the amount of glucose present. So these things are there. Then therapeutics, peptides mainly are useful in regenerative medicine, tissue repair, and things like that. And then cancer therapeutics. Several other kind of things are also there. For example, treatment of infection and so on. But the previous two, for example, cancer therapeutics as well as tissue repair and regeneration, mainly the focus these days. Then there is again drug delivery mechanisms where several inventions has been done through peptides and peptide-based scaffolds, where drugs can also be delivered to a particular tissue. So other than that, there are examples. If we see, for example, therapeutic antibodies and immunotoxins and so on. One such example, I don't miss it, the rituximab, an excellent monoclonal antibody, which was initially discovered for SLE, systemic lupus erythematosus, a autoimmune condition, but later it has now been also used in cases like this glomerulonephritis and nephrotic syndrome, even in kids. Then there is also the most celebrated example of Herceptin, which is useful for breast cancer and targeted antibody, and next a drug which is a blockbuster drug, and there is a huge market for this also. Other than that, there are several other peptides and protein molecules. Some examples could be EPO, erythropoietin, for patients who are suffering from terminal renal injuries, where they can only they cannot able to produce the erythropoietin all by themselves, and endogenous EPO is being used as a drug. Several other things, interleukin 2, and then interferon, again a very good example where hepatitis are getting this thing is the treatment or therapeutics towards hepatitis viruses is having very good response in interferon gamma, and in India many of you might already know this thing. CGI Chandigarh is doing excellent work towards it, and now it is an established treatment for hepatitis B, C, and all kinds of hepatitis viruses are treated by means of interferon gamma. So these are some very common. There are plenty of others which are not much common. Therapeutic peptides only, and to generate a peptide with a specific anticipated behavior and action, protein engineering plays a great role. Now, as I have said, I'll come to these points as well, which is it is very much costly to bring about a change in the protein structure and then it as a therapeutic tool. And due to limitations like my lab, where we cannot afford a lot of tool because we are a very small entity, so we depend hugely on machine learning tools to find out where exactly we should put the mutation and express the protein. So one more group of drugs, these are catalysts and enzymes. Now this is also very interesting, and this is there is a huge scope for engineered proteins and peptides. Let me give you an example. like in India, deabsorption syndromes and several other things like including food habits and all. Indian population has a deranged what do you call is ability to digest the food they consume, and there are multiple implications of it. So what happens is there is a huge market of peptide based therapeutics which are mainly enzymes. If you go to a shop next to you, you will find a bottle of like pepsilase combination and things like that, and pharmaceutical companies do huge business here. So here also there are possibilities that we can bring about certain changes in the structure of the critic protein and eventually bring about some additional benefits. Before that, we need to think of several other aspects to it. More peptide-based therapeutics that is very important these days is the vaccines. So if you see this particular, it will give you a timeline of approximately 10 years to develop a complete vaccine from scratch. As you can see, the clinical trial phases are there. Then before that, some conceptual things, and then some experimental part, and eventually it will come into the market, which will take at least time of a decade. But today, as you know, that there has been rapid development in vaccine engineering due to the large scale scope that is established by machine learning and related microprocessor based technologies, and therefore the timeline from 10 years is reduced to 1 year today. Now it is the thing of discussion that how much success has we have already achieved. Because as you know, the previous kinds of vaccines, I'll give you an example of polio vaccine, which is very, very foolproof kind of and very, very useful, and which lead to eradicate the whole menace. But the vaccine that we have developed in a couple of years, the COVID vaccine is not very foolproof, as you know, because the mutants are coming, and you can no longer depend on the vaccine you have taken, and you cannot say that once your population is vaccinated, they are immune. There are a couple of different other things. Anyway, while considering a protein for a therapeutic purpose, these are some common aspects that we should look into. Antigenicity is one. Let me give you one more example of therapeutic, which is very, very common, is of this thing, insulin. The insulin was been proposed for the treatment of hyperglycemia and related complications of diabetes. Initially was discovered, then at that point of time, we came to know that insulin is a kind of very stable structure, and you can use the insulin from swine, that is from areas. So once upon a time, it was a established norm to procure the pig pancreas from the slaughterhouse, then homogenate it, and then do a little purification kind of solvent extraction and like echo two-phase extraction kind of, and then putting it into a bottle and putting it into the kit. So the people who are getting rid of their diabetes, there is no doubt, but there were several people who were showing a significant cross-reactivity kind of thing, or hypersensitivity towards the swine insulin, and there's a need that we bring about the change. We now use the human insulin only for treatment, right? Because there was severe antigenicity. Now, in the contrary, if designing a vaccine, if your vaccine is such that it is not initiating a very good immune response, it is also of no use. Antigenicity is an important aspect before you go into a full-scale development of a peptide-based therapeutics, and on the basis requirement of your this targeted therapeutic outcome, you need to decide how much antigenicity is needed in that. And there are several other things. The pharma people call it like pharmacodynamics and kinetics. Similarly, we will talk about bioavailability. If the protein is so this thing unstable that it will under some kind of autocatalytic cleavage and it will end up nowhere, so this is also not a target, isn't it? It should reach the targeted tissue and then do the activity. So there are a couple of other things as well. Then one thing is cross signaling. Now this is also very important. Let me give you a quick example. The patients who are suffering from this thing, what you call as bed sore, the geriatric patients who are suffering from bed sore, the prolonged this thing they will be bedridden, and the pressure ulcer will develop because on skin a particular point the pressure will be there, and quick ulceration will take place. Now, in order to heal them, there is medication today in the market, which is an excellent innovation by the pharma company. And the name of the exact drug I'm telling you, the name of the drug is Placentex, an excellent innovation all by itself. Why? Placentex contains a homogenate of animal placenta, which is nothing but a cocktail of various kinds of growth factors: epidermal growth factor, fibroblast growth factor, then several other kinds of growth factors which are usually there in the placenta. Because in order to develop the full grown a small embryo, you need to have all kinds of resources there. This they remove the placenta, homogenated it in a tissue mixture, and then put it into the market. Now the problem with the growth factors is that these are very unstable. Okay, and you need to protect the active site in such a way that it do not get degraded spontaneously. So in order to do what they did is they put it into a hydrogel matrix, and therefore to stabilize the protein mixture which was there. Now, if you want to purify fibroblast growth factor in some or the other way, including your usual tool, that is recombinant DNA technology, still the cost will be very, very high. Placentex, I tell you, if you go to a shop, it will come within 400 rupees, like approximately 100 gram gel, which is good to treat a single for 2-3 days. Because what happens is the doctor will come and do the basic kind of, okay, by putting the Placentex. It's a very simple gel and beautiful blue color. And it's a very good innovation all by itself, because they did not purify it. They made no condition, but they managed in such a way that the potency is there. So several other things and cross reactivity that I was talking. So these fibroblast growth factors are also the proteins which are essential. What do you call as genesis of new blood vessels during cancer. Understood? So what happens? You because fibroblast growth factor you are putting in order to reduce the skin, okay, or treat the skin. On the other hand, it is also can trigger skin cancer all on a sudden. A localized cancer, but it can trigger. So before putting it into a use, you should have excellent background that how much dosage is there needed, and otherwise there could be some crosstalk between two different domains of the particle, because that will initiate different kinds of molecular level 2As, isn't it? So there are a couple of other things as well. Now in engineering, if you see that there has been some very good, okay, there has been some very good what we call as okay good innovations in protein engineering domain, mainly brought about by a couple of handful of companies, mainly from Scandinavian countries, Western Europe, and then Japan and USA. So if you see the list of the patents, you'll find out that there are a couple of handful of companies who are engaging in this kind of thing. In India also there is a huge. So this is a very simple slide that we can use to teach our students the concept of enzyme kinetics and things like that. There was a stick and it was been broken down. Without the enzyme, it's a lot of energy, and with the enzyme, it needs very less amount of energy. It was a very good slide, and I thought of sharing with you. So now, how exactly you will stabilize these peptides and do some kind of engineering in order to suit your need? How exactly you can do this? So you can the first and foremost importance of therapeutics is to enhance the shelf life. Okay, let me give you one example. If you isolate the cytochrome oxidase of a Pseudomonas syringe or Pseudomonas putida from soil sample, and you purify it, you will see that the cytochrome oxidase is highly unstable. Okay, so if you make an electrode out of it in order to put it into your glucose, the shelf life of the whole system will be approximately 1 month. Okay, that means what? Your expiry date of a drug is only 1 month, which is highly unfavorable for the company you are working for. So the company will give you this thing that you should make it at least for 1 year. You should make it stable so that it becomes at least 1 year I can make it in my shelf and then I can sell it. because it's not that every time you go to a shop and everybody takes this glucose kits, isn't it? It's just an example because in oxidase is there. So what you need to do is you need to engineer the cytochrome through various processes so that it becomes very, very stable, isn't it? So similarly, what are the methods you can stabilize it? The delivery mechanism can be changed. You can immobilize it, which the Placentex people has done, put it into a matrix, and therefore they are protecting it from the exterior dynamic environment, and then a sustained release kind of concept. Okay, and peptide assembly. Now, peptide assembly is also very new concept, and people are showing much interest. Now, in that, what happens? You are having a small molecular weight of protein, okay, which is initially very, very fragile. Now, in order to make more stable, what you do is you put it into a scaffold. That means what you do is you initiate a chain reaction which will assemble the small peptide molecules one after another to bring about a solid matrix which will have a functional higher molecular weight. So what will happen? The interior cores will link due to a steric hindrance kind of concept. In steric hindrance, what will happen? The interior core will be protected from the immediate environment in terms of ionic imbalance and electrical imbalance, then several other kinds of interactions like hydrophilic and all kinds of things. Okay, so what you do is you are assembling the protein in such a way that in the long run you are getting a overall higher stability. So these are the couple of things that are there. Other than that, also there are some very good examples to protect your peptide domains. Will try to discuss. This is a very common thing and very, very useful and very, very great achievement in particle technology where we are putting a light mediated delivery mechanism. So very good example again, particular companies, an excellent innovation. What they did is of this thing of this what you call is cholecalciferol. Now vitamin D3 synthesis is also again unstable. So and one more very important thing is vitamin D is a huge market. I do not know whether you if pharmacy, then you will be able to know it's a even in the tropical regions, including in so what happens is it's a big business, and they are am I audible?
You're audible, but your PPT stopped. You need to reshare your PPT, sir.
So what exactly has happened? The PPT is not visible, right?
Exactly, sir.
So what has happened is what the pharma people did was they put the vitamin D salmon, okay, a tropical no temperate fish which is not present in India, and put it into a liposome. So what has happened? The availability of this thing, the overall, it into a spray. So if you go to a shop for it, I think the vitamin D3 spray are coming nowadays, and it becomes this thing what you call as aerosol, and you can inhale the whole vitamin D3 into your system. So this one also a very good innovation what they did. So even or making this what do you call it?
Sir, your voice is not audible, I think. Ma'am, voice audible है?
He got disconnected, I guess.
Is okay, so these were the things that the common things that were there, and so these are the common things that we can teach our students how to immobilize. And here the objective of immobilization is to enhance, not exactly enhancing, but to enhance the shelf life. So one more usual tool that we do in our lab is to protect the active sites by various modes. It's also very simple. Now here also one more important this thing in 2015 we saw that we are having an excellent peptide and we identified it, did everything else, but we were not able to stabilize it. It was a very small peptide, as you can see in the page, a 9 amino acid long, and it was very difficult to this thing stabilize it and make it into a product. Why? Because it was getting distorted very rapidly, but it was having an excellent anti like a pathogenic activity, and there was a very less chance that a pathogen will eventually develop drug resistance. Okay, so it was an excellent this thing, but at the end of the day, it was not seeing the light of success because of its unstable architecture. So what we thought is what exactly we need to do. We anticipated that by putting a exterior shell will help, and eventually it did. And we took so much of this thing, what we call as motivation from this particular lab, who is in the front run of peptide based engineering. And this is the same lab which proposed for a based vaccine in 2012 against COVID. At that point of time, it was not exactly COVID-19, but it was coronavirus. So this was the lab which understood that in a day or two, it will eventually become big and we need to prepare ourselves from then on. But we did not listen, eventually end up with the whole this thing that has been till now going on, and we are not very sure that when it will be completely eradicated. Anyway, so how exactly you will stabilize the whole concept? This thing is that if you reduce the free energy of any protein, it will eventually have achieve more and more stability. Understood? And in order to do so, we depend a lot on computational tools and microprocessor based technology, who eventually calculate the exact amount of free energy that is there in a peptide. We can also able to understand that whether through our simulation we are able to reduce the free energy or not. The objective of free energy reduction is nothing but to also reduce the of disorder, that is entropy. So in order to do so, we can able to do couple of different kinds of this thing, or because this kind of experiments. For example, addition or subtraction of the some residues in the protein, and eventually cut it down and also put some more additive domains onto it, which is many other things to discuss in protein engineering, but we'll still try to explain in couple of this thing. So it was the initial peptide that we identified, and eventually it had very limited scope to sustain, but when we made it into a scaffold, dipeptide and tripeptide scaffold, it had excellent increment in its stability. We are able to quantify the exact amount of stability it achieved through quantification tools of various kinds. We used not only one, but plenty. And eventually we also understood that the peptide assembly has also reduced the overall dynamic domain movement, and therefore we achieved significant stability. And one more aspect that we anticipate to do is to reprogram the whole architecture, and then putting couple of more additive tool into the whole system. So this is a very common and very nicely depicted experience. This shall I say a representation where the goal of protein engineering has been depicted in a nice way. If you can see, the objective of the event is to produce a candy which is either blue in color or red in color. So in order to do so, initially we are having some substrate which also taste sweet, but not exactly the way we want it. So this is candy, and that is the substrate, as you can see, blue red combo. But we want it exactly blue and exactly red. Understood? Two different flavors. So how exactly we'll do it? We'll add some kind of enzyme and eventually we end up with some product. So what has happened here is the completely reshuffling of the substrate has been taking place, and therefore we have not yet achieved our anticipated goal, that is a blue candy and a red candy. So in order to do the significant changes in the protein, what we can do, we can they have listed out several tools and techniques through which we can bring about this. Now these are all tools and techniques which needs a lot of wet lab experiments. So in order to reduce the cost, we are highly dependent on, as I have said, simulation tools. Now these are some very good examples where protein engineering has given excellent results. I will not discuss it much. For example, here substrate specificity of an enzyme has been significantly changed. See, it's a hallmark experiment where initially in the wild type PDC, pyruvate decarboxylase was only able to accommodate a proton and eventually produce a product that is this thing what you call is acetaldehyde. Okay. Later on, we modified it in such a way now it can accommodate a whole benzaldehyde molecule and eventually a whole new product can be formed. Now, this is all the good things that protein engineering can do. Here again, a very celebrated example where initially the wild type protein was only able to accommodate phosphorylated products and phosphorylated substrates. After the modification in the structure, we ended up with the ability to handle dephosphorylated product substrates, and eventually it produces dephosphorylated products as well. So there are a couple of more. For example, here initially the wild type enzyme was only able to accommodate 3 malonyl CoA, a long chain substrate. But once we have done the modification, we can now accommodate 2 malonyl CoA. Now, how exactly we did it? We did it like this. So what these people did was they did a protein engineering and excellently they have modified the structure of the active site. So this is how they have done it. And we had some video this thing also to make it more engaging, because the post lunch sessions are challenging for the participants as well as for the presenter, because most of the time people will feel dizzy. So what happens exactly in the wet lab is you will either do error prone PCR. These are mainly PCR based tools and techniques in order to incorporate a particular kind of mutation that you anticipate. And there are several other things to discuss in this particular thing, but since due to the limitation of the scope, we are not going to discuss it. Here again, a thing that you need to understand about the host cell biology, and eventually we can select which kind of host is needed for the whole experiment. And these are again some very good example from starch processing industry. It's a fundamental industry which is needed in textile, drug, pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, and many other things. So I have specifically taken some examples of it. Starch processing has seen excellent this thing what we call is innovation in protein engineering, where several enzymes has been changed rapidly and with very good result. Now we can able to do these simulations due to a very good development in data processing tools, techniques, and the whole in the ecosystem of data science. So there are some couple of tools. These are this I must mention. One such a tool that we use in our process that we have used, which is a probabilistic classifier tool, which can find out what exactly kind of output of a particular mutation you can have on a protein. We'll do a little hands-on if the scope is permissible. Then this particular probabilistic tool finds out the probability of a particular substitution on the basis of its prior experiment. Now, machine learning is very similar to human learning as well. On the basis of your experiment, you take some decisions. The machine learning also works in the same pattern, but in a very step-by-step way. So this is again the whole this thing of how exactly things comes in perspective, but there are limitations of scope. So here again, as I have said, that there are ability of these tools to predict a very good domain which is highly stable and can help to protect from various other strains of COVID. And here also we can use this, and people are using it. These are again a demonstration of how the protein will look like after the stability has been enhanced. So eventually we reported it, and World Health Organization has showcased a part of it also. Now there are several disadvantages as well. One such disadvantage is it will not give you a 0 and 1 kind of result. Understood? It is not a binary result, yes or no. Whether the mutation is good or bad, it will only give you a this thing. What do you call as a number on the basis of the probability the user should take the decision. At the end of the day, it definitely helps to find out whether the mutation is good or bad. Now this has been developed by a particular this thing a particular lab. It is not developed by ours. We'll give a little demonstration if the participant want. Now all these things are possible due to a high development in genomics. This is the whole genome sequencing technique that I'm not discussing now. And if we move on to the hands-on, it will be better, I guess. So okay, fine. So may I request our coordinator to play the first video so that participants will have a little more understanding of how exactly this protein engineering is taking place. So, madam, is this possible that you from the email, if you can?
Can you just tell me what was the name of the video?
There is a link, the first link. The first video is there. If you click on it and share your screen, I think the technical person who's there, who you can do this nicely.
I'll be seeing to it.
Fine. Yes. Okay. If you share it, no problem. Otherwise, you can play it.
I had shared it. You will see.
Okay.
Let us just start.
Okay.
I'll share.
Okay, fine. Absolutely. Now this video will I do. Okay.
I'm just stopping your screen.
Okay. Yes. So there will be my audio will be there, but the video's audio will be muted, madam.
Okay, sure.
So what happens is Atal has given us an excellent platform. This is not the first video, madam. Is it?
Yes, it was the same on the on your email ID.
Just
tell me the name of the video, then it will be better for me to just play the video.
Okay. Anyway, madam, you play that video only. I'll try to say what exactly is happening there.
The cancer genomics is there, then
okay.
particle-based drug delivery is there. Which one?
Okay, fine. Okay. The first one only, madam, about genomics. So exactly what happens is Atal, I must thank for giving an interdisciplinary kind of platform. I do not know about the structure of the audience right now, but in couple of other sessions, I have seen that computer science people along with pharmacy, biotechnology, all are there. So it's definitely this thing. Now, what happens is usually in cancer diagnostics, usually the previous days, what has happened is the sample was been treated and identified and done into a what do you call as a kind of no, this is the therapeutics part. Okay, no, the diagnostics part. So usually what happening was they will do the tissue section and staining of a particular kind and then analyzing it. Previously, okay, still now it is being practiced, the analysis of biopsy and tools like this, but later on what exactly happens is you add genes into it. So what will happen is beforehand only you will come to know if you are prone to a particular kind of disease, isn't it? So this is a glimpse of genomics that what it can do. So similarly, by use of genomics only, we can also bring about very rapid innovation in peptide based therapeutics. If it is not a therapeutics also, in a protein, we can bring about rapid changes. But this is also possible because genomics is there. Somebody is there who will analyze the whole genome sequence and then find out the exact DNA sequence which is there for this particular protein, and then we will able to reshuffle it and produce the mutants. Now it's up to you how you scan and screen the mutants, and finally get your mutant with a particular kind of what you call is function. So this we try to give you a glimpse that what exactly is happening even in genomics and diagnostics. So madam, please play the second video, which will give a perspective of targeted drug delivery in nanomedicine. So in that video, yes. That video has been produced by Monash University, and which clearly shows that how what is this thing what you call is custom-made drug or excellent drug delivery. So if you see here, this is again a fluorescent microscope where various kinds of cells can be seen. Okay, since the fluorescent tags were being used, there are two kinds of tags. One, the nucleus is stained in pink color, which is usual, and one more where there is some degeneration in the nucleus, and therefore it will be stained in blue color with a different fluorochrome. Okay, now your drug is so good that it can identify where there is something wrong. As you can see here, these are the under the fluorescence microscope, and this is that particular cancer cell, okay, which is blue in color. Now this is your drug which you have put in vivo, and now it is so good that it will target only the surface, isn't it? For example, in breast cancer there will be ERB11, isn't it? The receptor. Then several others, for example, like in prostate there will be PSA. These kinds of surface antigens will be there. So those surface antigen will handle the drug and it will get internalized. As you can see, this is the clathrin coated or receptor mediated endocytosis that we usually call it. So what will happen is now it will get now it is crossing the barriers kind of endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi, everything. Okay, it is bypassing the whole system and directly growing to the nucleus. The nice video they made. Yeah, now it is nearing the nucleus and then it will get internalized, if you can see. So the drug is designed in such a way, the drug is interior, okay? The nano drug that they are saying, it is interior. Outside, this is only the engineering, peptide engineering. And then it will entrap into the nucleus. You will see there is a whole lot of a cycle that will start. It will be either a like autocatalytic cleavage kind of thing in the cell, or like a kind of initiating a programmed cell death kind of situation where the targeted cell will only get degraded. I do not know whether you have been able to see it correctly, because in between it must have shown that a particular cell is only getting degraded. I could not see it, madam. Have you seen this? That particular step where a particular cell is only getting destroyed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, it has been seen. Okay, from my end, it was not able to, not shown. Anyway, so this is how this targeted drug delivery is needed and protein engineering is needed. So custom-made drugs are again very relevant today. I'm not only talking about the small molecular drugs. Usually when we talk about drugs, we are only talking about small molecules, salts and kind of things. In peptides also, because there is a huge scope of therapeutic thing. The peptides also should be engineered in proper way to bring about certain changes in the patient compliance as well as overall outcome of the therapy. So as I have said that peptide based scaffolding can also help to enhance the stability, and in order to visualize this, we are having a video. So madam, may I request you to play the first video where the participants will able to see how a less stable peptide will look like. It was a picosecond scale video which we have morphed and made into a whole length of video. Madam, the third link, do you have?
Yes, sir. The third link is about this coarse grain.
Yes,
brownian.
yes, right.
You want the
right.
voice on?
So what is yes, no, leave it,
Okay.
madam. My voice will be there. So
Okay.
what has happened, as you can see, only the some part of the what do you call is the C alpha bond, that is the backbone, can be seen. Okay, rest of the things are cannot be seen, because what we have done is we put the protein into a simulation box with some specific this thing stress, a particular kind of time interval, particular kind of pH, ionic strength, and then a temperature and all such things. Okay, now this peptide is very unstable. Okay, why? Because there are several reasons behind that why this peptide is unstable. But the good thing is the peptide is very good in killing some pathogens which you cannot kill by low amount of antibiotic. Okay, in nanomole, picomole, it needs lot more. But in this case, this particular peptide is so good that it can eradicate the pathogen, but it's highly unstable like this. So what will happen is whenever you will put it into the into a challenge, for example, like now this is in vacuum. Okay, so if it is a vacuum, it is stable, you can see it. But once you putting it into a simulation box, you cannot able to see it, it gets degraded. Okay, now when we did a dipeptide assembly, madam, please, the next video. Now, in this case, what we did, we made into a scaffold of only two peptides, 1 and 2, or 2 peptides together. Now you will see how the stability changes, and it will all on a sudden it will not get highly stable, but you will see the domain movements have been reduced. Then more and more structure is more visible. So what does it indicate? It indicates that there is a rapid change in the overall stability. Okay. So, madam, second video.
It's the same, I guess, the coarse grain Brownian. This is the one. Duplex can be.
Yes. As you can see here. Yes, madam. So here, as you can see, the same simulation, only the protein stability increases. And therefore, you can see the helix kind of things you are seeing. Same protein, same simulation, only the overall functional molecular weight is more. So what has happened is, it has become more stable. It is not highly stable, but at least more stable than the previous one, isn't it? Okay, and we did it by Brownian molecular dynamics. And now I'll share my screen. Thank you, explanation. Okay, all over again. So what has happened is, so this is possible. Okay, so we'll do a little more hands-on. I hope you are still making yourself available. So this is again the Pseudomonas syringae whole genome sequence, and from that whole genome sequence, we will find out a small portion of it, which is our protein of interest, that is cytochrome oxidase. Okay, then we will put the cytochrome oxidase into a simulation where we will try to what we call is change the structure of the protein, and we will like to understand that how the stability will be changed. Okay, so it will give you an idea that how exactly protein engineering is usually done. So during 2014-15, when we were struggling again to find out the cause of a particular kind of rare heart disease, and we got a little funding from an international agency, and we eventually found out the reason for that disease. At that point of time, genomics was not the way big the big it is today, and we struggled a lot, and eventually we found out that there should be a particular tool which will do many such simulations all together, and we could not find one, and if it was there, it was very costly. Eventually in 2020, we tried to put it everything on in a single place, and then make a specific hardware for it, and then eventually we submitted the patent, and we are very much anticipating that we can able to collaborate with a small scale industry to monetize our product. Now by saying so, I'll move on to the hands-on if you are still there. So madam, shall we move to the hands-on for a small demo kind of thing?
Yes, yes, sure, sir.
Okay then. So madam, may I please request you to share the first simulation link with the chat box as well as in your screen, madam.
Yes.
It will read
You
like
will be putting up the Xerox part, no?
www.ncbi kind.
No, that I.
Right, madam, right.
Sharing this. Okay. I had shared all the participants. You can just open this link.
I'll come to the and answer right away. Just we'll do a quick simulation. Madam, the link have you shared? The first link?
I had shared in the chat box and
Okay. So in that, what happens is it's a very common database that everybody uses, the whole genome sequence of Pseudomonas syringae. Then we'll move on to a particular site of it, that is cytochrome oxidase. That also in the primary protein sequence, that is after translation, all the PTM kind of thing will be over, and then the final this thing cDNA translated. Okay, cDNA translated thing we'll have. So I'll not going to discuss about the how this whole genomic process has been done, but directly go to the this thing end result. Okay. So due to a compatibility issue, because my institute subscribed to a particular kind of this thing, and this particular session is going on in a different platform, and therefore there were some technical issues, and I requested madam to coordinate.
is there any issue, sir?
In the screen, I don't know whether everybody can see, but it is not visible, madam.
Screen is not visible. You can just open the third link directly, and you can tell what sequences they want to pick from NCBI. The link.
No. Madam, is it not possible to share your screen, madam?
Sir, which link you want me to open? There are three links.
The first link of NCBI.
So that is something, the link which you shared, na? So just mention me, just put the species name in the chat box. That is, the link is from NCBI. The link is from NCBI, because what I'm opening when I'm opening is just redirecting to the home page of NCBI. You just need to mention which species you want to
I think this is the genome database. I think it is the genome database, madam.
Yes, I'll just open it. Just wait a second.
So usually what happens is there are a couple of other database as well, but from this database you can depend on it many a times. So what happens is the whole genome database is there, and then I think that it is the whole genome sequence of
I'm just
Pseudomonas
sharing it
putidae that I have. Huh.
to all the participants. I'm just sharing the links which sir wants us to just open it. Okay. And I'll be showing you the links as well. So the first link is about this.
I'll just see here also.
Okay, the first link is this one, Pseudomonas. Okay, whole genome shotgun sequence.
Of which organism is this? Pseudomonas syringae,
This
madam?
was something which you have sent me, the first link on email, and this is the second one, the second link.
Okay, let's see what happens. I see what has happened. Okay, there has been a mistake. What was the second link, madam? What was the second link? Okay, both are this thing only. BRC. Oh, I see. Okay, that Pseudomonas thing is not there. Okay, that was made for a different session. Anyway, so we'll go to the Harvard genetics this thing. So, madam, please share the Harvard genetics and Pseudomonas syringae cytochrome oxidase. Okay, cytochrome oxidase CDS. Pseudomonas cytochrome oxidase and the Harvard genetics. These two, if you open, that will be enough. Okay, the links that were been given here were for an entirely different kind of this thing. Anyway, we will ultimately able to do it.
So this is the platform
Now,
you want me to open?
Fine. Yes. So what has happened is this is been developed by Harvard Genetics Lab. Now, this is again a very common process that we can either download a software all by ourselves as a standalone version. So when you download a software as a standalone version, the problem is that you need to put all your computational resources for that. Okay. Now, this particular tool that we are madam has opened for us is a tool that require huge database, and therefore if you want to download the standalone version of it, you need to have a very good kind of NVIDIA kind of workstation kind of thing. Okay, so everybody cannot able to this thing afford it. Okay, in my lab, my students cannot able to afford it. So it's better that we do not download it and we use the grid computing network of Harvard University themselves. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll do the simulation directly in the server, and therefore we'll use the grid computation of that university itself in a through a remote server. Okay. So for that, what we'll do is, madam has already opened this thing, cytochrome oxidase of Pseudomonas species from NCBI, I guess. Madam, can you just quickly in Google? NCBI Pseudomonas syringae. That's all. Pseudomonas cytochrome oxidase.
Okay, that will be a protein sequence you need.
Yes. चलिए यहीं पे जाते हैं, तो जाके ऊपर प्रोटीन कर दीजिए ऊपर में जो विंडो है, यहाँ पे ऑल डेटाबेस नहीं कीजिए, ऑल डेटाबेस का साइड में चले जाइए मैडम। Pseudomonas cytochrome oxidase लिख दीजिए और ऑल डेटाबेस को क्लोज करके प्रोटीन कर दीजिए। हाँ चलिए, हाँ इसको ड्रॉप डाउन कीजिए, हाँ प्रोटीन कर दीजिए, हाँ बहुत बढ़िया। अभी देखते हैं क्या आता है इसका, सर्च कर दीजिए मैडम।
First is okay.
हाउ मेनी 59, फाइन गो, 59 would be good madam, हाँ ओपन कर दीजिए,
You need a faster sequence.
हाँ okay, okay then, so it is there now. Let us a little quick look. Okay, it starts from M, at least you can say that your this thing N-terminal residue is intact, but you may not be very sure with the C-terminal residue. Anyway, whatever thing we have, we will do with this. Madam, please select the whole from the greater than sign. पूरा का पूरा कर लेते हैं greater than sign से, हाँ copy करके वो window में, we will put it in this window. Okay, so we are putting it in this window. Fine. Now we'll do the simulation. So let us see what is the sixth amino acid. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Isoleucine. चलिए और एक बार देख लेते हैं, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. छह क्या है? आइसोल्यूसिन है कि क्या है? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. मैडम आइसोल्यूसिन को सिलेक्ट कीजिए और मैडम यहाँ पे पोजीशन पे लिखिए 7. May I request madam to please put the digit 7 in the position window. There is a small position window if you can see. हाँ, position window, हाँ यहीं पे digit 7. Okay, so it is isoleucine there, madam. From AA1 select I, GHI देखिए madam. Okay, we are selecting isoleucine. Now isoleucine is a highly non-polar, a little larger than leucine. Highly non-polar and fully aliphatic amino acid. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll replace it, since it is completely non-polar, we'll put a polar amino acid. Let us find out aspargine. Madam R पे ये कीजिए, नीचे वाला AA2 जो है उसमें R को सिला, हाँ arginine को लेते हैं. So isoleucine and arginine are two far away amino acids. One is completely non-polar and another is completely polar. So we'll see what exactly happens. So madam, please put submit query. If we put submit query, let's see what happens. Okay, now you are entering into the grid computational network. It is nothing but a mainframe where a huge database of systems and things and these are that or they are, and you are using that computer only directly. Okay, so you will have your session ID, then your grid status, that how many people are using it. Not many more people, only 2 are pending. 10 simulations are running now, and what we'll do is we'll click on refresh, so our results may come. Okay, it may quickly come. Okay, it is still running. Let us see what happens. So 2-3 times a refresh. Okay, so we'll view the results, madam. View results. Blue color का icon है, देखिए आ गया madam, result आ गया. So we'll go to the result window and click on view. Yes. So once we click on view, we'll see the result. What exactly has happened? Okay, now here you see the result. Now it is probably damaging. Now we anticipated beforehand only it will be definitely damaging. Why? Because you are changing, you are doing a rapid change. What you are doing is you are replacing isoleucine with arginine. Now isoleucine, the side chain is a aliphatic side chain with no extra burden of an ion. But in arginine, there are two more positive charges due to 2 more amine groups. If you see the structure of arginine, you will find 3 different positive charges. So what is happening? You are replacing a completely non-polar thing with a completely polar residue, isn't it? Upside down. So this thing may be damaging only. And therefore, as you can see here, you will take the decision whether you will do away with this particular mutation or not. But here you can see is it is probably damaging. On the basis of this anticipation, you can go ahead. You can decide whether you should do the experiment or not in your wet lab. Now this particular tool is completely free and very good, and everybody uses it, even with these things also. The genomic companies are there, no? For example, several life science companies are there who are doing genome sequencing for you. If you give your genome, they'll sequence it and they'll find whether there are some mismatches or kind of mutations there or not, isn't it? So they also use this, and it is completely free, and a lot of people are using it. So, and this tool was based on a probabilistic classifier or naive Bayes algorithm, the computer scientist would say it. So in this way, we can also have a small quick look on how exactly the protein engineering can be done for getting better patient compliance, and at the end of the day, to help the mankind to have some better therapeutic outcome. So by saying so, I'd like to conclude, and if I can answer some of your queries, I'll be very, very happy.
Thank you, sir. Participants, you may ask your questions.
I have seen one question, one professor has written. No, in the video, we showed two videos. In the first video, a single peptide was there in the simulation box and it was getting degraded rapidly. Okay. Later on, we made into a scaffold and artificially increased the overall molecular weight, and eventually we saw that the protein is less degrading, means more stable, isn't it? So this was the thing we wanted to demonstrate.
Anyone else?
Sir, I have one query. How?
Please, sir, please.
Yeah, audible. Yeah. How SNP is more correlate to drug choice apart from drug receptor enzymes? Because here we are
Which one, sir?
point mutation manually, right?
Yes.
Yes, because we are doing the point mutation manually. So how we can check the effect of that mutation on the particular target of actions? Because according we have to change
Okay, excellent.
side of the drug also.
Okay, excellent, very good, nice, sir. So, sir, as you have asked the correct question only, that how exactly you will decide. Now, I'd rather say that protein engineering has become more art than the science itself. So, as I have said, that there are some thumb rules. Let me give you the thumb rules. One thumb rule says that you should not replace the this thing if there are some kind of like cysteine. Now, what cysteine does is it produces disulfide bonds in order to make some solid arrangements in the protein. Let's talk about the structure of the antibody, as we all know, where the chains are being held together in the form of disulfide bonds. Okay, so if you change the disulfide bond in the structure of the antibody itself in order to accommodate something else, consider this, that you are trying to develop a monoclonal antibody which will also carry a drug like a toxin kind of thing, which will be delivered at the targeted site, and eventually it will kill the cancer, isn't it? So in order to do so, you have to definitely do some arrangement, isn't it? You need to protect the Fc receptor also. You need to protect the antigen binding domains also. There must not it must not initiate significant that cross reactivity also. A couple of other things are there.
Because
isn't it? So what happens is,
one query in my mind is that suppose we do the point mutation, suppose in that particular position of the particular peptide, if we change the particular amino acid, suppose structure is query structure, it will suddenly automatically change to the beta sheets or helical region. So effect of that particular peptide also may be changed, right?
वही तो सर इसीलिए बोल रहे हैं कि हाँ सही बोल रहे हैं आप, मतलब ये जो है ये एक आर्ट है.
Yes.
माने in a single talk we cannot able to hold each and every aspect of it. So, but it is good that you have appreciated.
Yeah.
No, manually you can definitely do. Most of the time you have to do it manually only. But before that, you should have sufficient background information. How exactly the protein looks, whether there are some what you call prosthetic groups in it, which kind of crosstalk it will engage in, whether it is a growth factor, which kind of receptor is this, whether the receptor is bound on the surface or the receptor is present within the cytoplasm itself, because there are a couple of growth factor where the receptor are there in the cytoplasm itself, not on the surface of a cell. So plenty of things you should know, but we are just giving you an idea that this is possible and people are doing it in a nice way.
Yes.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Please, ma'am.
Sir, very
Yes,
nice and
madam.
informative session. Thank you for that. And I have a question, sir.
Thank you,
Sir,
Tanuja, madam. Please go ahead.
yes.
Please.
Sir, for example, if, a protein, it depends on pH content, right, sir? So whether it is proper,
Absolutely.
yeah, whether it can be find out using this molecule that is blocking, sir.
No, definitely we can do, madam. The thing is that so what we can do is I'll give you a full scale description of it. Madam, would you please share what exactly is your this thing interest right now, so that I can give some specific examples, which kind of protein you are working on?
Actually, I'm working on that is anti-inflammatory actions I'm doing, sir. Working on
Fine.
that is, yeah, yes, sir. So actually that protein it is a pH dependent, I know that. Before going for the
Sure.
animal studies or in vitro studies, whether it is possible to find out at what particular pH my protein is proper, that is it functions efficiently, like that is my query.
Yes,
sir.
madam. Yes, madam. Yes, madam. You can definitely do this if you do. If you use the GROMACS toolbox and adjust the simulation box with a specific kind of a pH and ionic environment, you can definitely see how your protein is behaving. Then when we'll analyze the trajectory movements, you will definitely able to find out what is the impact of this change of the pH on a particular residue also. What will happen is eventually the domain movements will also change. For example, when it is in native condition, a particular pH, a particular domain movement is there, isn't it?
Yes,
which
sir.
we
Yes,
call
sir.
R square.
Yes, sir.
When you will change when you will see the change in the R square, you will definitely understand that there is something, some change is there. Now it depends on your study and your background study, which I am not aware of, that whether you want to protect this particular domain motion. For example, I give you one more example. For example, like DNA polymerase is there. Okay. Now DNA polymerase in the active site, it is having a magnesium residue. Now this magnesium residue, what it does is it coordinates between two aspartic acid residues. Okay. So whenever you change the structure of this active site, or you replace some amino acid in that particular active site, the coordination bond between the magnesium and the amino acid is getting also changed. And therefore it may happen that it will accommodate some wrong residue. For example, instead of A, it is putting T, and therefore it is promoting the mutation. So what I am exactly trying to say is, where you will put your mutation completely depends on the background of the enzyme. Many times it may happen that if you are replacing, the example we did, if you are replacing isoleucine with aspargine, nothing happens. Please understand, madam, what I'm trying to say.
Yes, yes,
you
sir,
are
I
doing
can
a rapid
understand, sir.
change. You are doing
Yes.
a rapid change. Yes, you are doing a rapid change, but instead of that, your stability is not rapidly changing. It can also happen. What I'm trying to say is, आपको लग रहा है, you are thinking that if I replace isoleucine with like glutamic acid, so there will be a rapid movement in the protein will completely die. But in result, what you see is nothing is happening. So it can also, there are plenty of other, what do you call as factors which will ultimately influence the overall dynamics of the protein, madam.
Yes, sir, absolutely, sir. Now I got some clear
So
idea.
you need to,
Yes.
but so what you need to do is, madam, you need to plan for a large scale mutation study. Each and every mutant you have to analyze one by one, madam, and finally you will reach to your goal. And let me tell you one more thing, madam. During this process, no, when you are generating a lot more mutation, I have a collaboration with a particular biotech company in this thing, what do you call, in Pune. They are also having an office in Noida. So we are working together to put mutants and give mutants to the particular researchers. Now, during the process of generating the mutants, no, madam, you can write 2 papers out of it. What I'm trying to say you, madam, the process is so beautiful that before reaching the goal also, you will have plenty of data. And if you can arrange your data in a proper way, you can generate very good intellectual property out of it. So means what I'm trying to say is it is not only the result, the process of the getting your result is also very good.
That is
Madam,
very
I was audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I just muted, sir, for because
Okay,
here
okay.
some disturbance is going on. Sir, for that muted, we can go for like AI using that artificial intelligence. Also, we can automatically also we can find out, right, sir? Is that
No,
what?
no, no. That will not give you a good. No, 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 no. It will not give you a good result. The time you will spend to write the code in Python or something else to make it automated, why you are going for this automation? If you do it for automation, what is your ultimate goal? Ultimate goal is to find out better this thing protein. No. So I do not think any need is there to write a whole lot of code to mutate the whole process. You do your biology background in a solid way. You read about the enzyme from scratch to like upside down. Everything you read out, you will eventually know. A small. If you are working on a particular, if you are looking at 100 different proteins altogether, like high throughput, this they'll do no. They'll take a particular protein and then a full library they'll dock, isn't it? So in
Yes,
those
sir, yes, sir.
cases, it is fine. But no, in that cases, everybody is doing it and the codes are already there. There are plenty of tools where you can do this large scale docking in 2 days, 3 days time, isn't it? So it is there. But in our case, we are not going to it. We are not encouraging the whole thing because
Okay.
ultimately the art out of it will vanish. Everything will be automated. No, the art out of it will vanish and you have very less thing to write, isn't it?
Okay, so I think we can just, there is one question, one last question I can take. That's from Sabirna. She wants to ask, how would you propose the role of machine learning in antibody engineering, specifically by incorporating single point mutations in bispecific antibodies?
Yes. So what has happened is bispecific antibodies are such that it will try to do the thing of like an antibody which is having multiple domains, and therefore it will enhance some specific things called antigen dependent cell mediated cytotoxicity, ADCC. And one more thing which is also very important, that is what we call is complement fixation. So in order to do this kind of things, which is very useful for immunity driven anti-cancer therapy, that is the talk of the day these days. So in these cases, the bispecific antibodies and things are very important. There is no doubt in that. So in order to understand the whole process, we will definitely do some wet lab studies, and eventually you can use this thing in order to find out how good the bindings are there along with the antigens and the antibodies. Now for these, there are excellent docking tools, as the madam has already said. Where you can find it out, and docking tools are nothing but computational tools only based on machine learning only, and they'll give you very good results that whether there is sufficient binding or not. Now before going to directly to the this thing, you should also think about how the HLA processing will be there. For example, you have designed an antigen, okay. Now the antigen is not directly going to bind with the antibody. Before that, it will enter into a pathway where it will be processed on the basis of its HLA locations. If it is an exogenous antigen from a bacteria, it will be processed through HLA2, that is what you call is MHC2, isn't it? Now, if it comes from a virus like this thing, what you call is COVID. For example, you are taking a COVID, what you call is surface glycoprotein, and then trying to bind it with an antibody. So if you are doing it all the way wrong, isn't it? Why you are doing it wrong? Because it is not going to directly enter into the antibody, isn't it? What it will do is, it will first entrapped by a T lymphocyte or some kind of antigen processing cell, which will then degrade and then presented through MHC2, isn't it? So MHC2 binding becomes more important than antibody binding. So this is how what I trying to say is on the basis of your this thing, the anticipated goal, your processes will be different. If the tool is not there, then you can talk to your computer science friends to write a code for you, and eventually you end up with your own software. So this is also possible, and there are several computational tools which are already there in the market. Since we are very small entity, my college is very small. I do not think anybody smaller than my college is there in this today's discussion right away. So we cannot afford, but people are there who can afford excellent tools and techniques and databases. Since we do not able to afford, we look for free stuff, and either possible we collaborate with people and end up with our own code. Then we try to publish and see what the response is, and eventually also we'll try to market our product. So this is one process. The other process is that if you have sufficient finding, you purchase it and do it all by yourself on the basis of your need, which kind of study you are doing. Your things will be different, but the concept remains the same only, isn't it? So I think in this way I can able to explain it.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. I think we are over with the questions, and I really want to thank you for accepting my invitation. It was really very informative talk. I would like to request you to please share this PPT with me so that I can share with all the participants.
Yes, madam. Yes, madam. Yes.
Really informative PowerPoint, and you had just made a very beautiful PowerPoint with lot of information in that. And your hands-on session was also very informative. And I will also be using the same tool if I'll be going for some kind of simulation for my students. So thank you again, sir. And I really hope we will have more sessions like this in future. And thank you again. And participants, thank you for your patience. I'll be sharing the information soon as sir will be sharing his PPT with me. Okay, so we'll have.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we'll have tomorrow's session at around 10 o'clock again. Okay. Please fill your attendance on the link which I have shared in the chat box, and we'll meet again tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Thank you, all of you.